Melbourne lockdown in a small house with an even smaller backyard with our 3 lively sons was challenging on a whole new level. Every day, the bunny, 2 green tree frogs, 3 chickens, and a cat got a big workout every day. They played hopscotch, hung out in cubby house, sat on the boys' laps during online learning. Our youngest 5th birthday party was Peppino sitting on a chair on the pavement in front of our house, sharing cake with a couple of neighbours' kids while keeping 1.5 metres social distancing. Hi, my name is Kristyna Hessova. My photography business is called Kristyna Hess Photography, and I'm very excited to be part of this project. Where am I from? Where do I currently live? Yes, I'm a professional photographer of 16 years in Melbourne, Australia, but I'm actually originally from Czech Republic in Europe, and funnily enough, after 2 years of lockdown in Melbourne in 2020, 2021, I have relocated my whole family, our 3 children and my husband, for a couple of years to live back here. So I'm right now in my parents' countryside house. I couldn't come and see them for 3 years, and now I'm back here doing what I love doing, photography and reconnecting and enjoying beautiful spring. Photo is of 2 out of my 3 children doing their online learning on an iPad with their lovely teacher and a schoolmate. And the funny thing is that Felix was in grade 3 at the time, not like his brother who was not enrolled in school just yet. He was still in kinder, but he basically learned how to read and write in the first year of lockdown. So when he then went to school for a couple of months before we had another lockdown, he was already completely literate. Yeah, it was pretty tough. Why did you decide to become a photographer? I got to Australia when I was 24. Wanted to travel with my then boyfriend, now husband, who is Australian, and as I was educated, I studied to be an actress, and that didn't really flow, but I always was very keen on photography and did a lot of photography on my own, and I didn't dare to be working professionally back in Europe because I had too much respect for all the incredible, well-educated, university-shaped photographers in here. But when I got to Australia, I saw people charging for photos that were really not good. And I also ran into my mentor, Peter Coulson, who's a well-known fashion photographer, and he takes photos and teaches photos very intuitively. And I didn't think I was such a technical person, but I'm a very intuitive person, and I just fell right into it, assisting him and then doing my own thing and starting with family photography and then progressing into commercial. And lockdown threw me back to the origins of why I started, and I am still shooting, and it is to capture the emotions. I love people, and I love their stories, and capturing their stories and their emotions is one of the biggest privileges of my life. And then actually when they look at the photo and their eyes light up and they go, wow, I look beautiful. Look at us, we look amazing. That is the biggest reward as well. At some stage, we were only allowed out of the house for 1 hour a day with, as the caption says, with 3 little boys. At the time, there were 5, 8 and 11. And we were used to take them to school every day and to kindergarten. And I had my almost full-time job. It was a massive change and it was a huge challenge. And taking my lockdown portraits, which is a project that developed, I was also recording interviews and consequential interviews, how families were coping ongoing, because the lockdowns in Melbourne were ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. That basically helped me survive because I had a project going and I was shooting from long distance. So I don't go anywhere near people. I kept 4 meters distancing. I had my long lens and I was shooting it from outside of the front fence. And it worked really well. And it was fun because the community, all sitting at home, doing homeschooling and home officing or nothing, grew really tight and lovely in Kingsville in Melbourne, in the inner west suburb. So there were things about the first lockdown that were really lovely. Just to back to basics. We were exchanging recipes and food. I made homemade hummus for all my neighbours weekly. Received cakes at my door weekly. There was a lot of beauty in it, reconnecting, but also a lot of questions about what was happening. And so when 2020 finished and we were in the summer 2021 and we had a little window when we could travel, not out of Australia. Australia was completely locked, hermetically closed. No one in, no one out of Australia, not even Australian citizens were supported to come back home from overseas. I decided in that little window at the beginning of 2021 that I'm not going to wait for another year or winter full of lockdowns, which I had a feeling were to come. And we bought a second-hand off-roader car, four-wheel drive, and we bought the pop-up trailer, a caravan that we could afford, which wasn't very luxurious. It was basically a tent on wheels. And within 3 months, we packed up the whole house, rented it to our beautiful friends from across the road, and we drove off to do what many families did in Australia during lockdowns in the last 2 years, and that was travelling all around Australia, and it was the best decision. We were super lucky and we just escaped all the lockdowns as they were chasing us along the East Coast. We just cleared the 2 weeks each time, which was the time frame. If you were in a lockdown area, within the last 2 weeks, you had to lock down in the caravan park, wherever you were, and that caused a lot of troubles to those families that were travelling, but we were super lucky. We were woofing in organic farms, met incredible people, connected with Australian nature, and I loved Australia before, but I got much deeper connection and understanding of the nature, and the boys had the best time, and the homeschooling was much easier on the road with all those things happening, adventures, and we were in the wild. We went wild in the bush. Yeah. What was my process when taking this photo? The two captions I took. My process was to caption the extraordinary times when everything about our lives changed from one day to another. The restrictions were very, very tight. We were locked down for, I think, 3.5, close to 4 months. We did not know when the lockdown was going to finish. We thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, a couple of months. It was much longer than that, and we never experienced anything like that. It was difficult mentally and physically. There was only 3 reasons to leave home: go to work, which most of us were working from home. Only essential workers were allowed to go to work, which is basically policemen, healthcare, basic shops. Most shops and restaurants were shut. There were takeaways open, a couple of coffee shops. Otherwise, everything was shut. And for exercise was the third reason. You could go outside, but you could only go outside for 1 hour, and within the 5 kilometers parameter, there was an application to put your address in and see the 5Ks radius. We were just on the edge to go to the beach, which was a lifesaver as well. And there were many, many rules about how many people can actually go outside at times. 2 people from one household at a time first. No way to talk to anybody else. You just walk. You do not say anything, and you certainly cannot go anywhere near anyone else but from your own household. It was really quite comical, but we believed that was the best way to go about it. We trusted our Prime Minister, and we all obeyed to the rules pretty much to the dot. There was a ring of steel around Melbourne, which basically was policemen sitting in a ring just on the outside of the city, checking everyone who was going in and out, and you had to have a piece of paper printed from online proving that you're an essential worker and you're travelling for work, because there was no other reason than travelling for work. There wasn't even, people couldn't even go to see their relatives. People couldn't visit their dying relatives. There were families that were, we have a family that lives about 20 minutes drive, and we were not allowed to see Uncle Phil and Aunt Jenny's, and they weren't allowed to see us. And some suburbs were policed heavily, other suburbs were policed lighter, depending on the demographics. So yes, I was fully aware that that was not a natural way. That was not a normal way. Everything changed from one day to another, and I felt wrong. And all my freedom was taken away. I did have a beautiful house to live in, and I was very grateful for that. And I felt the calling to document it. So thank you for sharing those images and these stories. I think they carry a value in the story, what happened in Melbourne and all around the world in 2019, 2020, 2021. My community that I captured in those photos is beautiful. So I would like the world to know that even though Melbourne went through incredible tough times, people stuck together, at least in the little neighbourhood where those captions are taken, and somehow people were not separated in that year, in 2020. In 2021, when we travelled, the whole 96% immunisation, the COVID vaccine, separated a lot of people. And when we got back in December 2021, I had most of my friends tell me that they can't see me because I'm not vaccinated. It was coming from a place of fear, 2 years of lockdown, and I believe they were doing the best for the community and themselves and their children. And I deeply respect and love them for that. Luckily, as the restrictions were easing off throughout Christmas, they all came around and I got to see everybody. We were excluded from one Christmas party, but that was okay. But yeah, the segregation was pretty full on. My identity, I'm a Czech Australian, and I think my origins and my heritage was the source of those bells ringing in my head, thinking in Victoria I'm being completely cut off all my basic rights, and I didn't feel good. I love Australia, I love Victoria, I love Melbourne. But I had to move. I also couldn't see my family for 3 years. My mother was ill. She recovered with COVID and then with another form of similar disease. She had she had water on her lungs. And so I did what I always wanted to do. I packed my children yet again and my husband and moved here for a couple of years. It's not a definite move. I miss Australia dearly, just as much as I missed Czech Republic for all those years. How do I feel about having my work featured in printed media? Is that important to you as a photographer? Hell yes. I am very, very excited to have those photos printed because they do exactly what I shot them for. They bring the emotions and they bring my own perception of what was happening in 2020 in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia. So thank you for that. I'm excited about the project. Thank you for asking me for this interview. I'm very honoured. And I've put a lot of work into those photos and the interviews. And this is the best reward. Yes, that was the first part of lockdown. The second part of lockdown 2020, I wasn't even allowed to take those photos and my world shattered completely. I could not take photos. I was not allowed to go outside and point my professional camera at anything. I was on the list of industry that was not permitted. And I sat home for 3 months and taking photos of my children definitely helped. But I had to reevaluate my whole life. Yeah. Transformation times. Okay. Thank you so much for doing this project. I love it. I can't wait to see the whole thing. Thank you for publishing my photos. I'm very proud and honoured. Sending my love. Bye.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that last episode and learned something new. Don't forget to tune in to the next episode to see what other crazy, incredible, creative, and empowering lessons you can learn from the photos in this book.